The cake arrived at 1:12 on Saturday afternoon. I remember the exact time because I was standing beside the kitchen island with one hand under my stomach and the other holding a digital thermometer over a tray of chicken salad sandwiches. 32 weeks pregnant, and I was still checking food temperatures. That was how my mind worked. Numbers made things manageable. The bakery driver set the white box on the counter and asked where I wanted it. I pointed to the dining table beneath the paper clouds my husband had hung the night before. The cake was pale blue with small white stars around the edge. No name, no cheerful message. Just one sentence written in thin gray icing. Already loved. My husband, Adrian, had chosen the words. He stood in the doorway with a roll of tape hanging from one wrist. His dark hair was flattened on one side from crawling beneath the table to secure an extension cord. He looked at the cake, then at me. He asked if it felt right. I said yes. It was the first baby shower I had ever attended where nobody knew whether the baby would live long enough to come home. My mother called it a celebration of hope. My sister called it uncomfortable. She did not say that to me. She said it to our cousin Nadine, who told my mother, who told Adrian, who waited 3 days before telling me. My sister's name was Camille. She was 28, 3 years younger than me, and she had spent most of our lives entering rooms as if someone had just announced her. Camille was not cruel in obvious ways. She remembered birthdays. She sent expensive flowers after bad news. She knew how to touch someone's arm while they spoke and make them feel heard. She also measured every room, who was thinner, who was praised, who had arrived first, who had something she wanted. Growing up, I thought that was normal, because she was my sister. At 27, after I married Adrian, I began to understand that love did not have to feel like an ongoing comparison. At 31, when I became pregnant after 4 years of trying, I thought Camille might finally stop competing with me. For 6 weeks, she did. Then we received the diagnosis. At my 20-week anatomy scan, the technician became quiet. I noticed it before Adrian did. She measured the same section of the baby's chest 4 times. She enlarged the image. She tilted the probe. She left the room and returned with a physician whose badge read Dr. Leora Bennett. Dr. Bennett sat beside the ultrasound machine and told us the baby's heart appeared severely underdeveloped on the left side. She used the term hypoplastic left heart syndrome. I wrote it down in the notes application on my phone because my hands needed something to do. The next 3 hours became a series of rooms: a consultation room with beige chairs, a blood draw room with a cracked plastic armrest, a maternal fetal medicine office on the 6th floor where a model of a heart sat beneath a glass dome. They told us our baby might need surgery within days of birth. Then more surgery. Then possibly a transplant. They told us there were no guarantees. Adrian held my hand until 2 of my fingers went numb. I asked questions. What measurements were abnormal? What margin of error existed? What the survival rates were? What hospitals had the strongest pediatric cardiac teams? I worked as a quality control analyst for a company that manufactured laboratory equipment. My job was to find weak points before a product failed. I lived in spreadsheets. I trusted recorded data more than comforting language. That day, the numbers were not comforting. We told our parents that evening. My mother cried into a dish towel. Adrian's father drove over without calling and sat on our front steps for 40 minutes because he did not know what to say. Camille arrived at 9:30, carrying a white orchid. She hugged me for a long time. She said she was sorry. Then she asked whether we were still going to have the baby. I stepped back. I said yes. She nodded slowly and said she only wanted to understand. 2 days later, she told our aunt that Adrian and I were choosing a very difficult life. Our aunt repeated it to my mother. My mother asked Camille to stop discussing our medical decisions. Camille said everyone was too emotional and she had only been realistic. I did not confront her. At that point, I was conserving energy. Every Monday morning, I opened a new spreadsheet: appointment dates, fetal heart measurements, medication doses, blood pressure readings, names of specialists, insurance reference numbers, questions for the next consultation. I tracked my pregnancy the way I tracked a defective production line, not because I thought I could control the outcome, but because I needed to know exactly what was happening. At 24 weeks, the diagnosis remained. At 26 weeks, it remained. At 28 weeks, Dr. Bennett said the baby's condition appeared complex enough that delivery should happen at Alder Creek Medical Center, a fictional hospital 40 minutes from our home, with a specialized cardiac unit. We transferred my care. We toured the neonatal intensive care unit. A nurse showed us the family sleeping rooms. Adrian asked where he would be allowed to stand during surgery. I asked where they stored expressed milk if the baby could not eat. We became fluent in a future we had never wanted. The baby shower had been my mother's idea. I refused the first time she mentioned it. I did not want games involving melted candy bars in diapers. I did not want guests guessing the size of my stomach. I did not want a mountain of newborn clothes when our child might spend the first month attached to machines. My mother waited a week. Then she came to our house with a yellow legal pad. She said we did not have to pretend everything was normal. She said we could hold a small gathering, no games, no large gifts, just family, food, and a place to say that the baby already mattered. Adrian wanted it. I could see that. He had been building a crib in the spare room, but had not yet installed the mattress support. He stopped each night after tightening only a few screws. He said he wanted one day that belonged to our child instead of the diagnosis. I agreed. We scheduled it for the first Saturday in May. 30 people were invited. 24 said yes. Camille did not reply for 9 days. When she finally called, she said she had been busy at work. She managed a showroom for a fictional furniture company called Marrow Lane Interiors. She had recently been promoted and spoke about the position as if she had been elected to office. She said she would attend, but she wanted to know what kind of mood we expected. I asked what she meant. She said she did not want to wear something cheerful if the event was supposed to be solemn. I looked through the kitchen window while she spoke. Adrian was outside measuring a board for the crib. I told her to wear whatever she wanted. She said she only wanted to support me correctly. I said, "Then come as my sister." She was quiet for 2 seconds. Then she said, "Of course." The week before the shower, we had another fetal echocardiogram. It happened on Tuesday at 8:40 in the morning. The room was cold enough that Adrian kept rubbing his palms against his jeans. A new pediatric cardiologist performed the scan. His name was Dr. Ishan Vale. He was older than Dr. Bennett and spoke very little while he worked. For 53 minutes, he measured the baby's heart. Then he asked us to wait while he reviewed the previous scans. He returned with Dr. Bennett. She closed the door. I reached for Adrian's hand. Dr. Vale sat across from us and placed 3 printed images on the desk. He said the newest measurements did not support the original diagnosis. I did not understand the sentence at first. I asked him to repeat it. He said the left ventricle had developed within the lower end of the normal range. The valves were functioning. Blood flow was present where they had previously struggled to detect it. He said the earlier scans might have been affected by fetal position, image quality, and a temporary growth discrepancy. I asked whether the baby had hypoplastic left heart syndrome. He said, "Based on the current evidence, no." Adrian made a sound beside me. It was not a word. It was one sharp breath that seemed to break in the middle. I kept looking at Dr. Vale. I asked whether surgery would be necessary. He said there was no current indication for cardiac surgery. I asked whether the baby could still have a heart defect. He said a small defect remained possible, but the major diagnosis we had been preparing for was no longer supported. I asked for the measurements. He gave them to me. I asked for copies. He printed them. I asked whether a second independent review could be arranged. He said it already had been. A second specialist had reviewed the images that morning and agreed. Adrian bent forward until his forehead touched our joined hands. I looked at the 3 images on the desk. For 12 weeks, I had organized my life around the possibility that our baby might die. At 10:18 that morning, 2 physicians told me our baby's heart appeared healthy. I did not cry until we reached the parking garage. Then I sat in the passenger seat with the door still open and cried hard enough that my ribs hurt. Adrian knelt on the concrete beside me. He kept saying the baby was all right. I kept asking whether we had heard them correctly. He placed the report in my hands. The words were plain: normal ventricular development, no evidence of critical congenital heart disease, recommended standard neonatal evaluation after delivery. I read the page 6 times. We called our parents from the car. My mother screamed once, then apologized for screaming. Adrian's father cried silently. We did not call Camille. That decision was mine. I told Adrian I wanted to wait until after the follow-up appointment on Thursday. Thursday's scan confirmed the same findings. The baby's heart was functioning normally. We could return to our original hospital for delivery if we wanted. No planned neonatal surgery, no immediate separation after birth unless another issue arose. I should have called Camille from the hospital. Instead, I sat on a bench near the main entrance and looked at the text messages she had sent over the previous month. One asked whether we had considered that bringing a medically fragile child into the family would affect everyone. One said our mother seemed consumed by my pregnancy. One asked whether we were expecting people to act happy at the shower. The most recent message had arrived 2 days earlier. She asked whether I had registered for items I would actually be able to use. I had answered only the last one. I said yes. On the bench, I told Adrian I did not want to announce the updated diagnosis before the shower. He studied my face. He asked why. I said because the shower had been planned when the news was bad. Everyone who came would be coming without the promise of a happy ending. I wanted to remember that. He asked whether I was testing people. I said, maybe I was testing one person. He knew who I meant. He did not argue. We told our parents to keep the new diagnosis private until Saturday. My mother struggled with it. She wanted to call every relative she knew. I asked her for 48 hours. She agreed. By 2 o'clock on Saturday, our house smelled like coffee, warm bread, and the lavender hand cream my mother used whenever she was nervous. Guests left their shoes near the front door because rain had softened the yard. My aunt brought a stack of handwritten cards for the baby. Adrian's father carried in a wooden box he had built for hospital bracelets, photographs, and medical papers. Nobody used the word tragic. Nobody asked whether we regretted continuing the pregnancy. They touched my shoulder. They hugged Adrian. They placed gifts beneath the paper clouds. At 2:37, Camille arrived. She wore a cream dress with small green flowers and a narrow belt above her waist. She was carrying no coat, though it was raining. Her husband, Theo, followed with one hand pressed lightly against the center of her back. I noticed that. Then I noticed the gift bag. It was small and glossy, with silver tissue paper, too small for diapers, too carefully held. Camille hugged me. She smelled like citrus perfume. She said I looked better than she expected. I said, thank you. Theo hugged Adrian and would not meet my eyes. That was when I knew something had been planned. Not what. Only that something had. I spent the next hour moving between conversations. My cousin Nadine showed me photographs of the quilt she was making. My mother refilled glasses no one had emptied. Adrian kept checking whether I needed to sit down. At 3:25, everyone gathered in the living room while we opened gifts. There were soft blankets, bottles, a sound machine, and several gift cards for meal delivery. Nobody bought clothing larger than 3 months. They were still preparing for uncertainty. That detail stayed with me. My aunt handed me the wooden box from Adrian's father. I lifted the lid and saw the baby's initials carved into the inside. A.R. We had chosen the name Arden Rose. Only our parents knew. I ran one finger over the letters. My eyes filled. Adrian sat beside me with his hand on my knee. Then Camille stood. She did it while my aunt was still explaining how the box had been sealed. Camille touched her glass with a spoon. The sound was light, but the room quieted. She smiled at me first. That smile mattered to her. It made the next part look accidental. She said she knew today was about Arden. My mother stopped moving. Camille continued. She said the last few months had been difficult for everyone. and the family deserved something hopeful. Theo looked down at the carpet. Camille placed one hand over her stomach. Then she said she was 12 weeks pregnant. For 1 second, nobody reacted. The room did not understand what had happened quickly enough. Then my aunt gasped. Someone said congratulations. Theo stepped beside Camille and put his arm around her shoulders. Camille laughed and said they had planned to wait, but being surrounded by family felt like the right moment. She looked at me. She said she hoped I understood. I watched my mother's face change, first surprise, then anger. My father, who had been standing near the window, lowered his coffee cup onto the sill with both hands. Adrian's fingers tightened around mine. Camille reached into the glossy gift bag and removed a small wooden sign. Cousins. The word was painted across it in gold. She held it beside my stomach while Theo raised his phone. She asked Adrian to take a photograph. Adrian did not move. My baby shifted beneath my ribs. One heel pressed outward on the right side of my stomach. I placed my palm over it. Camille lowered the sign slightly. She said she had wanted Arden to have something to look forward to. The sentence was gentle. That made it worse. Not because she was pregnant, not because the family would love another child, because she had chosen my baby shower to announce it. She had chosen the one day created to honor a child she believed might not survive. She had called her pregnancy something hopeful. She had placed it beside mine as the opposite. My mother said Camille's name, only her name. Camille's smile disappeared. She said she was not trying to take anything away from me. I believed that she believed herself. She was not trying to take something. She was trying to replace it. I looked at the wooden sign in her hands, then at the carved initials inside the box on my lap. I thought about the spreadsheets on my laptop, the hospital tour, the questions Adrian had asked about surgery, the crib he could only build 3 screws at a time. I thought about everyone in that room who had arrived, knowing there might never be a photograph of Arden outside a hospital. They came anyway. Camille had come carrying a sign. I closed the wooden box. The latch made a small click. Then I stood. Adrian began to rise with me, but I touched his shoulder. I was steady. I told Camille congratulations. Her face softened immediately. She said she knew I would understand. I said I did understand. Then I walked to the dining table. Beside the cake was a cream envelope containing the newest scan report. I had planned to tell everyone after dessert. I picked it up and returned to the living room. Camille was still holding the cousin's sign. I handed the envelope to my mother. She knew what was inside, but she opened it anyway. I said there was something about my pregnancy that most people in the room did not know. Camille glanced toward Theo. For the first time that afternoon, she looked uncertain. I told everyone that on Tuesday the doctors had repeated the fetal heart scan. No one moved. I said the original diagnosis had not been confirmed. My aunt covered her mouth. I continued because I needed the words to be clear. I said Arden's heart had developed normally. There was no evidence of the condition we had been preparing for. No planned surgery. No expected transfer to the cardiac unit. Our baby was healthy. The room changed. It did not erupt. There was no dramatic screaming. My mother began crying, even though she had known for 4 days. My father crossed the room and held the back of my neck. Adrian stood beside me and pressed his forehead against my temple. His father sat down hard in the nearest chair. My aunt kept saying, "Healthy," just that one word, healthy. Camille's wooden sign hung at her side. I looked at her. I said we had waited to share the update because I wanted today to remain about the people who had shown up when the outcome was uncertain. Her face became pale. I did not say anything else. I did not have to. The truth did not humiliate her. It only removed the explanation she had prepared for herself. She could no longer claim she had brought hope into a hopeless room. She had announced her pregnancy because she wanted the room. Everyone understood it. Nobody needed to say it aloud. Theo took the sign from her and placed it back in the bag. Camille asked why I had not told her. I said I had told the people I trusted to keep the news private until today. Her eyes shifted toward our parents. My mother folded the medical report and placed it back inside the envelope. Camille said that was unfair. I asked what part. She did not answer. For several seconds, the only sound was rain tapping the front windows. Then Adrian's father stood and hugged me. The room slowly began moving again. People asked to see the report. My aunt wanted to know what had changed. Nadine cried into a napkin. The joy was cautious at first. Then it became real. Not loud, not theatrical. It moved through the room in small physical ways. My father cut the cake even though we had not finished opening gifts. My mother turned on music. Adrian brought the unfinished crib photograph from his phone and told everyone he would complete it that evening. The words "already loved" became smeared when the first slice lifted from the cake. Camille remained near the doorway. No one excluded her. My aunt hugged her and congratulated her again. My mother asked whether she had scheduled her first full prenatal appointment. Nadine offered her a glass of sparkling water. The family did not punish her. They simply stopped allowing her announcement to control the day. At 4:10, Camille asked if we could speak privately. We went into the laundry room because every other room was occupied. The dryer was running with a load of kitchen towels. The vent made the room warm. Camille closed the door. She asked whether I had deliberately let her embarrass herself. I leaned against the counter. I said I had not known she was pregnant. She said I must have suspected something when she arrived. I said I knew she had planned something. I did not know what. She crossed her arms. She said she had only wanted one happy memory connected to her pregnancy. I asked why that memory had to happen at my baby shower. She looked toward the closed door. She said she thought people needed good news. I said they already had a reason to gather. She said that was not what she meant. I told her I knew. Her eyes filled with tears. For a moment, she looked like the little girl who used to stand outside my bedroom after breaking something and wait for me to decide whether to tell our parents. She said she had spent months listening to everyone talk about me, my appointments, my fears, my baby. She said our mother barely asked about her work anymore. I listened. She said she had found out she was pregnant 3 weeks earlier and had not felt special for even one day. I asked whether she had told our mother privately. She said no. I asked whether she had told any friends. She said only Theo. I asked why. She wiped beneath one eye. She said she wanted everyone's reaction at once. There it was. Not a confession of evil, just the truth. She wanted the room. I said she could have had her own dinner next weekend. She could have invited everyone. She could have announced it at our parents' house, or her house, or any restaurant in the city. She said it would not have felt as important. I looked at her for several seconds. Then I said, because nobody else would have been holding a medical report. Her mouth opened, then closed. The dryer continued turning behind me. I told her I was happy her baby existed. I said I would never make her child responsible for what happened that afternoon, but I also said I would not pretend her decision was harmless. She asked what I wanted her to do. I said nothing today. I told her to return to the living room, accept the congratulations people offered, and let Arden's shower continue. She asked whether I planned to tell people she had known about the diagnosis. I said everyone in the room already knew she had known. She looked down. I opened the laundry room door. Before we left, she said she had been afraid her pregnancy would always come second to mine. I said children were not rankings. She whispered that everything had always felt like one with me. I believed her. I also knew I could not repair that feeling for her. We returned to the party. Camille stayed for another 30 minutes. She did not make a second announcement. She sat beside our aunt and answered quiet questions about her due date. When she left, she hugged me carefully. She said she was glad Arden was healthy. I said I was glad her baby was healthy too. That was all. After the final guests left, our living room looked like the remains of a small, gentle storm. Tissue paper beneath chairs, half-empty cups on windowsills, cake crumbs pressed into paper plates. The cousin's sign was gone. Camille had taken it with her. Adrian locked the front door and leaned against it. For a full minute, neither of us spoke. Then he asked whether I was all right. I said I was tired. He asked whether I regretted waiting to share the medical update. I looked at the pile of cards people had written for Arden before they knew she was healthy. One said there would always be a place for her in our family. Another said she had already changed us. One card contained no advice or optimism, only a promise that the writer would sit with us in any waiting room we entered. I told Adrian I did not regret it. The people who came had not needed good news to care about our child. That mattered to me. At 6:45, Adrian went upstairs to finish the crib. I cleaned the kitchen slowly. I wrapped the remaining cake. I washed the serving knife. I placed the medical report inside the wooden box beneath the carved initials. Then I added the first scan that had frightened us, the hospital tour brochure, and the list of questions I had written for the cardiac surgeon we no longer needed. I did not throw those things away. The diagnosis had been wrong, but the months we lived beneath it had been real. At 8:10, Camille sent me a message. She said she was sorry the timing had hurt me. I read the sentence twice. It was not a full apology. It placed the harm inside my reaction instead of her choice. I did not answer that night. 3 days later, she sent another message. This one was longer. She said she had imagined the announcement many times and had not imagined how it would sound after saying Arden's name. She said she understood why our mother was angry. She said she wanted to do better before either baby arrived. I answered with one sentence. I said that would take time, but time was available. Our relationship changed after the shower. Not dramatically. There was no final argument. No family division. I simply stopped giving Camille early access to the most vulnerable parts of my life. She learned about appointments after they happened. She received photographs when everyone else did. When she tried to compare symptoms, nurseries, weight gain, or baby names, I changed the subject. At first, she became frustrated. Then she adjusted. Without private information to compete with, she had to build a relationship with me that did not depend on being ahead. Some weeks she managed it, some weeks she did not. Arden was born on June 28th at 4:16 in the morning, 7 pounds 1 ounce. Her heart was checked 6 hours later. Normal rhythm, normal blood flow, no surgery, no transfer. Adrian held her against his bare chest while I watched from the hospital bed. She opened one eye, then closed it again. Camille gave birth to a son 4 months later. She named him Miles. I visited the hospital the morning after he was born. I brought food for Theo, a soft blanket for Miles, and nothing that required Camille to perform gratitude. She looked exhausted. She also looked peaceful. Before I left, she asked whether I had brought Arden. I said not yet. I told her Arden would meet Miles when they were both home and settled. Camille nodded. She did not argue. The 2 children met 12 days later in our parents' living room. No sign, no announcement. No phones raised for the first few minutes. Arden slept in my arms while Miles slept against Camille's shoulder. My mother sat between us and cried quietly into a folded tissue. Camille looked across the room at me. She said they were not competing. I looked down at Arden's small hand resting against my wrist. I said, no, they never were. That night, after everyone left, I placed a photograph of the 2 babies inside the wooden box. Behind it, I placed the medical report from the week before the shower. The page was creased where my mother had held it. The ink had faded slightly along one fold. At the bottom, beneath the measurements and clinical language, the conclusion remained clear. No evidence of critical congenital heart disease. I closed the lid and carried the box upstairs. Adrian had finished the crib on the night of the shower. Every screw was tight. Every rail was level. Arden slept inside it, beneath the paper stars we had moved from the dining room to the nursery ceiling. I stood beside her until her breathing settled into a soft, even rhythm. Then I switched off the lamp. In the dark, I placed one hand against the side of the crib. Her heart continued beating. Small, steady, entirely her own.